Welcome everyone. My name is Allison Frenzel and I am an education programs consultant with the California Department of Education in the High School Innovations and Initiatives Office. And we are excited to present for you Planning for CTE Remote Instruction, Strategies, Tools, and Best Practice.
I'm Jewel Alderson-Clark from the San Diego County Office of Education, where I am the Integrated Curriculum Coordinator. We're excited to have you all here today. We have about 90 minutes scheduled for this, depending on the Q&A sessions as we go through, as well as we have a few interactive pieces for you today. We wanted to mirror some experiences you might have with students and put you in those student seats so that you can try out some of these fun tools that we're recommending along the way.
So one thing to note, we have some stopping points and we'll be taking questions. So use the Q&A feature. We will not be able to see if you use the chat feature. So there's a Q&A at the bottom. Every time you see a U-turn slide, we'll be addressing the questions that come in through Q&A.
Okay. Today, in order to make it a little bit easier for you to access all the links that we have embedded in this presentation, we have put them all at the short link that you see here. I also just dropped that in the chat and you should be able to see and click on it there. And so this short link gets you to a resource document that does go through the links that you'll see today. And although we do not have access to the slides at this point, once it is made and approved for everyone to see, then we will be able to add those as well. Like I mentioned, we're going to give you some interactive opportunities. And so you can do that in two different ways. One, you can just open a browser and we'll give you a URL to put in, a website to put in, or you can use your cell phone and text 22333 and just text Jewel Clark 200, and that will get you in for the two questions we have today in the session using Poll Everywhere, which is a great ed tech tool.
So we're going to give you a second with these two resources. So we'll hold this slide up for just a minute as people continue to enter. As Jules said, the first link is something that you can type directly into your URL browser window right now for those of you who are just joining us. You can also just write it down if that's easier. That is all of the active links that you'll be seeing today, to reiterate what she said for our attendees that are just joining. So make sure you have that nearby. We do have it on other slides as well. And for the first activity, for those of you who are jumping on now, go ahead and text Jewel Clark 200 to 22333 and get ready for our first interactive Poll Everywhere question.
Great. All right. So Poll Everywhere is a really fun tool that embeds in with Google Chrome so that you can use it with a Google Slides document. So today we have one question that helped you get through this week. I know many of you are just kicking off the school year. You might be 3 weeks into the school year, or maybe you're just about to start next week. And so is there some kind of something that helped you? All right, that is probably the number one answer, coffee. Something that helped you kind of get through the week as you go through. So this is one of those things. Allison, did you want to talk a little bit about SDL and how important it is to start off really thinking about your students?
Sure. One of the things that we all know, just a little context, Jewel and I are both coming from our classroom teaching experience. Jewel was a teacher for 10 years and I was for 15 years. And so, you know, one of the things that is essential, especially in this strange world we're living in, is building community and building in some time just to do check-ins. So this is a fun way to do that with your students. Just at the beginning of a lesson or of a day, you know, just throw a question up there, have them do a check-in. And it might be something that you do when you're a few weeks in and you've already established community. But we just thought that this was a cool little activity because you could see it live happening.
Yeah, and it looks like I may have a cap on my free account as to how many, because you probably won't have 260 people in your session. Hopefully this has the capacity for any group, but it's nice because you can actually change your settings and put it into clusters or text walls or any variety of ways to look at it. But a word cloud is a fun one, and we can see that coffee seems to be the #1 answer here today.
And this tool is just an add-on in Google Slides.
Yeah, and the links are on that resource. So you'll see anywhere we had space for it, we put that resource link here at the bottom corner. And for those of you who are just joining us, I'm going to drop that in the chat again. So you should be able to access it there. All right. All right, so today we are going to go through a bit of a journey with introductions and overview. We're going to talk about planning, share some resources, and then get into things like routines and student engagement and a little bit on assessment, as well as some of the tools that we find really useful. And then really thinking about what's next in your journey as you go forward to support students this year. This slide may look a little overwhelming and cheesy, but our intention was to be really thoughtful about how do you take a slide presentation and make it a little bit more engaging, make it interactive, because as you know, we are all staring at screens all day long, and so we wanted to give you a little bit something different. This is just a plain slide where we put a whole bunch of different layers over it with different images, and we are going to click on each one. They're hyperlinked to different slides in the deck, and that will take us on our distance learning journey today. So we're going to start off, and Allison is going to give us a few tips on as you enter your classroom and where you might get started. Allison?
Yeah, so one of the things that you may or may not have seen is some documentation coming out of the California Department of Ed about distance learning and pedagogy. And so there's a couple terms that we wanted to start out with, starting specifically with teacher-facilitated learning and defining that. So one of the common myths is that all instructional minutes have to be done on Zoom. And actually, there's a nice important balance between both synchronous and asynchronous learning that makes for best distance learning practice. So Jewel, can you...
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
A Q&A, so we're working on balancing you all at the same time. Sorry.
No worries. So teacher-facilitated learning, you know, in the title is pretty self-explanatory, but this is when the teacher specifically delivers instruction to meet learning objectives. So examples could be teacher-produced videos, like narrated slide decks, for instance, or even curated videos and playlists that could be uploaded to YouTube or a different platform like Vimeo. And teacher-facilitated online interaction tools like Flipgrid, Pear Deck, and Padlet. So this is teacher-directed instruction. Next slide, please. So applied learning is something that the students drive. And again, this can be accomplished both asynchronously or synchronously. And in applied learning situations, students work through tasks to meet their learning objectives. So examples would be with using choice boards or playlists, which we will dive into a little bit later with some examples. Building integrated performance tasks, the students can respond to challenge-based questions and solve problems creatively, either in a collaborative or individual way. Applied learning does require modeling, scaffolding, conferencing, and thoughtful feedback and reflection for the teacher. So the teacher is the facilitator and the guide in applied learning, rather than the deliverer of direct instruction. And we found and heard from a lot of our teacher colleagues that open office hours really support this and offer both parent and student support to allow for one-on-one interaction with students. So we're finding that districts that have built in office hours into schedules are able to help facilitate applied learning that way. So one of the things that I feel like a lot of my friends who are in the classroom right now are struggling with is they're beating themselves up. I mean, realistically, planning for distance learning, for good teaching in a distance learning environment is almost, I would say, like 5 to 10 times the amount of work. And so while teachers are learning how to apply their skills in a new format, students have to have that same learning curve. So really investing significant time in teaching students how to learn in an online space is important. It's important to be forgiving with yourselves. You don't have to dive into content. Sometimes it might take 3-4 weeks just to really settle into the structure of this new mechanism. And so we just wanted to encourage and support that and give yourself some, some freedom to practice and give your students some freedom to practice learning in this new space. So thinking about what strategies can support community building, how, CTE is a community and our students are used to being in communities. And so how do we build that within our digital classrooms in the beginning of the year, maybe through small groups that are assigned, cohorts, for specific performance tasks? That would be one example. And most importantly, as we start the year, it's essential that students know why they are doing each and every assignment and task. So putting that up front, here is why this is important. Here is how it connects to industry. Here is how it connects to the real world and the standards and your non-negotiable learning objectives. So really making that why present to both the students and the teacher will help in getting the year going in a positive way. So this is our little U-turn. So at this point, we can look at the questions. We didn't think we'd have too many at this point. There's 296 of you now, so feel free to, oh, it looks like Jules responding to some questions as they go. So feel free to use the Q&A feature. I'm gonna go ahead and see if any of these questions Jewel replied to are applicable and should be talked about.
Yeah, in general, I think people were worried because we did reach the limit on the pull everywhere. If you're working with a classroom size group, it should be a lot more room for responses, but with a few hundred folks in responses, we hit the capacity. So I now need to look at those numbers for next time I do this.
And I do see 2 hands raised, but unfortunately we can't activate people's microphones in the webinar format. So if your hand is raised, please type your question in the Q&A feature, which is at the bottom of your screen. So we're gonna go ahead and loop back. Jewel?
All right, so throughout the slides, we have these U-turns and they're gonna bring us right back to this initial area here. And now that we've entered our classroom, what we need is a bit of a roadmap. And so as we go in, we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to plan for the big picture here. So when we're talking about CTE, really what we want to start out with is really know what the parameters are that are outlined by your district or organization. The California is a local control state, which means many of the decisions are being made at the local level. So you should make sure that you know things like how many hours are synchronous or asynchronous, if those are requirements, what are the assessment expectations, grading expectations, what your grading windows are, and also be thoughtful. Right now, a lot of districts are planning for in-person instruction. So once you know what that might look like, whether you go into a blended or a socially distanced environment, just kind of having an ear to the ground and knowing what's coming your way is helpful. And then also just really being thoughtful. A lot of times you don't realize what ed tech tools your district is actually paying for. And so it's important that you look at what your district has, what it has given you, use those learning management systems, as well as the ed tech tools that are already funded by your district. Once you get into now your classroom, you can really think more about what do students have to engage with learning. So first of all, what's issued by the school? So this might be things like books, but also technology from CTE. This might be more advanced laptops if you are able to invest in those. But we also see a lot of folks sending home equipment and supplies. Let's say you are doing any kind of programming, you could easily send home Arduinos for every student with a variety of connectors, and they can use those at home. And so you can send those supplies home, equipment home. We also see folks putting together other kits like basically like a culinary program may have a box that has everything from the measuring cups to the cutting boards and things to actually bake in. So depending on where you're at and what you need, you may be able to divert some of the funds that you would have spent on transportation and things like that into some of the kits and supplies that students can take home. And also thinking about once they're in the classroom that we'll want to reduce sharing of supplies and equipment. So whatever they send home may end up becoming what they can also use in the classroom when they're socially distanced. Additionally, it's not just what you send home with them, but also what they have around home. One thing you can do is an at-home inventory. So have options for them to share, what do they have access to? And this helps you, kind of know what the students have, but also where do you need to supplement if students maybe have less access. We see a lot of folks, particularly in the energy, environment, and utilities sector, being very thoughtful about recyclable products and how we can reuse them, repurpose them for instructional practice. So, knowing that so many of us are having a lot more deliveries, there are Amazon boxes everywhere, and perhaps you can put those to use for a classroom project if you can send home a kit with the proper, scissors or cutting mats that they might need in order to build a smaller model of what you might have done in class. So being thoughtful about what students might be able to have at home is also a great way to not only have them, participate, but also perhaps upcycle and be thoughtful about that side. As we get into big picture planning, there are kind of three big ideas. What do you want students to learn? How do you want students to learn? And then how will students show their learning? So we'll talk about some strategies for each of these today, but when we talk about what you want students to learn, this comes down to really peeling away your curriculum and what is the core of learning they need to walk away with. We know that they are not going to hit every single thing that we've done in the past. First of all, you're probably starting off this fall trying to make up for the lost learning since March. Because of No Hold Harmless, many students did not engage in learning. So we want to be thoughtful about what students would normally come to us knowing and bridge that gap so that students are able to engage in new learning with the foundation of those intro classes that they might have missed a big chunk of. Once you look at that, look at the coming year and think about what are the non-negotiable learning outcomes? How can you peel back the layers and really think about what you want students to leave and how this class can be kind of streamlined as far as learning is concerned. When we talk about how students learn, this can be a number of ways. Allison talked a little bit already about synchronous versus asynchronous and student-led versus, teacher-led versus students really having the opportunity to apply their learning. And so you want that balance there. And then when we get into assessment, we have a few slides here, and we're still building out what assessment looks like in this virtual space. So that conversation will continue. And we also encourage you, if you're finding strong assessment practice, to share those with us along the way, as this is a bigger community of practice as we go forward. A few tips as you get into lesson planning. First of all, there is a distance learning adaptation template that has been going around that was developed by Allison, and we will actually show some screenshots of that in a little bit. But this helps you to do weekly lesson planning. It's also something that you can use. If you fill it out, you could even give this to students as here's your list of assignments and outcomes for the week. You want to prepare everything ahead of time. Curate your resources, provide rubrics. It's being clear to your students is going to cut down on their anxiety in a huge way. We all know what it means to not know what's expected of us. In fact, many of us feel that way right now. We don't really know what's going to be expected, and how do we switch it so that our students do know and they're really clear on what we're asking them to do. We want to develop routines, and we'll dive into that as well. Just like in your class, you want students to be able to engage with the material in a routine way. And then also when we get into ed tech, really be thoughtful. If I threw a different technology at you every single slide, you'd be overwhelmed. It would take a lot of time to transition to that. So identifying a few tools and sticking to them is a great way to make sure that students can engage in a really meaningful way. Offering choice is a key piece of this puzzle, and we will share a little bit about some of the choice boards that we've seen as we go through this. And then don't forget to give students their own leadership and teaching opportunities. We know that students have been in CTSOs, they have had leadership throughout their in-person learning, and that doesn't have to end now. So I had a CTE teacher meet up last night, and somebody was in their first week of teaching and was having a hard time managing the chat. And someone else mentioned that they have a program that a teacher is running where students can basically be like chat monitors. So they sign up to be a chat monitor, they can get bonus points, and then their responsibility is to alert the teacher if there's a new question in the chat. And if they've done it really well, they might even get co-hosting power, and they can mute people and unmute people at will eventually. So, think about how you can give students those leadership opportunities as they go. Finally, you don't have to be alone. Not only you have your students who you can put to work, but you have an advisory committee and you have industry partners who have a vested interest in the outcomes of your course. Right now, they are also flexing to meet the current world needs as COVID-19 has changed what work looks like as well. And so they may be able to inform the way you teach. They may be able to do virtual work-based learning opportunities, or they may be able to give you tips on how they are changing the way they train people, and you might be able to implement those in your class. So don't forget, you do have an advisory committee for your CTE program that could be really helpful as you go forward. As you prepare each week, be really thoughtful about creating almost like a playlist of options. This isn't just, today you're going to do this, tomorrow you'll do that. You can give choice, and you can also pull in more than just slides. So think about CTE Online is a great resource to pull handouts and activities. They're pre-made, there are many assessments and videos and everything you might need to teach many lessons. And they're curating those resources that are most distance learning friendly right now. And that's cteonline.org. You can incorporate videos, not just from YouTube and Vimeo, but also from industry organizations. If you are a manufacturing teacher, there are many manufacturing plants who are trying to promote their work to others in the industry. And those videos can also be really helpful for your students to see the ins and outs of manufacturing. Hey, come down to our manufacturing plant and manufacture your board game here, right? They're going to walk them through that process. If your students watch those videos, they'll get a lot of insight into the industry. Also, things like simulations, activities, web-based software are great. I know one of my favorite web-based software is Canva, which does a lot of design work that you can use for free. Most of what we're talking about is no cost today. Again, industry websites are not only great for videos, but also for educational content. A lot of membership organizations are also great for that. Online certifications and training are always a plus when we can do that in a virtual environment. Now, when I go to learn, I rarely pick up a PowerPoint, right? I'm going to read articles that have been, and I might even look and say, okay, this article has been made 5 years ago. Is that really helpful now? So I really try to read current articles. I might read some blogs. Podcasts are a fantastic resource, and they are really up to date and talk about current events. For instance, in culinary, I know right now there's a podcast by Tom Colicchio. I am a Top Chef fan, and so Tom Colicchio is one of the judges, but he's really interested in the restaurant industry and advocating for them. And so he's created a podcast that gets deeply into current events in the restaurant industry during COVID-19. And so having students listen to that is going to be exponentially more powerful than all the work you might put into a PowerPoint, right? So take the pressure off of yourself and see if you can find those resources that already exist that are being made by people in industry first and foremost. Wherever you can incorporate hands-on activities, we know that's the foundation of CTE learning. So those take-home kits are a key piece of that. And also incorporate work-based learning. There are a lot of programs that have that. I know on our SDCOE site, we have begun to curate work-based learning experiences as well as record many of them. And so those we have available for free. And so we'll make sure that you have access to that on a link in a little bit. Now, once you've prepared these resources, now you can look for the gaps. And if you find the gap, that's where you have to create novel content. So when you look at a whole year ahead of you, don't feel Like, you have to create novel content. It's really about curating content that already exists. If you were to learn this for the first time, what would be most effective for you to learn it? Give those things to your students and let them experience it the way you would, and then just fill in the gaps afterwards. All right, so we'll pause right here. Allison, have you found any questions that would be best for me to answer?
Yeah, I'll go through them all actually.
Great.
So the first question is, do you have safety waivers signed for at-home kits and activities? So I'll speak from the California Department of Ed perspective here. Because of local control, it is your district that determines what your safety waivers should look like. So I recommend consulting your CTE coordinator at the district for that question. And because it's unprecedented time, I'm sure that that will have to be developed if it isn't already. Some districts have already done something like that. So maybe if your district does not have one, look at surrounding districts for examples. One of the questions that's come in is, can we use our send home as loaner equipment, our CDE paid for, or excuse me, our states paid for, whether it's Perkins or CTAG, can we send home equipment as loaners to students? The answer is that we do not have any regulations saying no. So according to the Department of Ed, your CTE purchased equipment is loanable if that's what the district deems appropriate. So I just wanted to clarify that. Questions will only show up on our feed, I believe. I'm not sure. So there was a question about that. So I'm just going to read
the answered questions. And so once we answer a question, it will pop into the Q&A section for you.
So because I'm answering these live, you probably won't see them. Will we get the PowerPoint later? Yes. So we are going to make sure that it is 508 compliant, and we will add it to a link to that live Google Doc that you have a resource, your resource document for this. Is there a specific info for online teaching for photography? I'm going to say for this one, shoot me an email. So the sector that I support is arts, media, and entertainment, and I can connect you to plenty of AME related resources. So Jewel, will you put my email in the chat while I'm doing this? Canva for Education provides teachers with a free pro account with more features than the basic free account. Yes, it does, and it's amazing. And one of the features is narrating. You can record over your slide deck. So that's a new feature for Canva for Education, so we highly recommend Canva. How do you spell his name? Jewel, that is the culinary judge guy.
Oh, Tom Colicchio. It starts with a C. Look up Top Chef Judge Tom, and it'll fill in the rest. And I'll look up that podcast right now.
And so, yeah, the next question is about the podcast as well. So Jewel will look that up. How might EL students be best supported? Recommended tools. Well, that is a very hefty question that I am going to say we're going to pause on and see if some of the strategies that we present will answer that. If not, feel free to reach out to us for more specifics, but we will be going into details in future slides about specific strategies that might support your EL students. Of course, using as much building choice and variety and using the universal design for learning approach supports EL students. And so we do recommend UDL. Who can I contact to develop a kit for medical assistant students? Well, at the Department of Ed, the consultant who supports health sciences is Cindy Beck. And if you're not part of HOSA, we recommend working with your CTSO because a lot of resources are coming out through those CTSOs. Again, you can reach out to Jewel and I directly, and we can also make some contacts. One of the things we're going to share out in this slide deck is a resource that was done curate, like what, how many teachers ended up showing up? 1,400 teachers or something?
Yeah.
So Jewel hosted sector collaboration sessions where 1,400 teachers from across the nation in different industry sectors pooled their resources. And so we're sharing all that out with you today as well. So you might be able to, and there's a list of contacts of other teachers from your sector that you could also reach out to. Has anyone used Microsoft Azure or AWS to establish virtual labs for students accessing industry-related software using their Chromebooks? Yes. So I will say that that is a very expensive solution. I can talk on that a little bit as from the AME perspective. And I would say that reach out to me directly and I'll share out some of the specifics around that we've learned, but it is not a very cost-effective solution as it would be to loaning students machines, or in comparison to loaning students machines. EL students do well with the Newsla website. Okay, that was some feedback. Another comment from Ted, the U.S. Department, oh yes, the U.S. Department of Education, and we published this in our CTE distance learning newsletter last month, so we will share those out in a second. The U.S. Department of Education has a CTE Mission CubeSat design challenge with a 25, whoa, it just disappeared.
Oh no, I did something.
Either way, there's this really amazing NASA challenge that U.S. Department of Ed has created. And so we will show you our distance letter newsletter and you can find all of the information for it there.
It's in the answered section.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Q&A.
So Q&A. Okay. Yes. So design submissions are due October 8th. This is an incredible CTE project. $25,000 prizes are being awarded. So Jewel, can you drop that into the chat while I go to the next question? The web link there that he's posted in the question.
People should be able to see the answered questions.
Oh, good. Okay, perfect.
And so that's why I had selected that, so it would pop over to the answer. But I will.
Okay, excellent. So I have to find where I was. Strategies for welding auto where kits aren't really available and yet much of their educational. I'm assuming you're asking for those strategies. And again, as we get into some of these things, they're more general for all CTE. They are applicable. And we understand that a lot of the hands-on learning in CTE is going to have to be on pause, hopefully temporarily, but there are so many other ways to engage students in a virtual space and still teach your standards. So there are, I know that's not like the answer people want to hear, but it's the reality. And so what we're going to do is really hopefully give you some stuff that will make you think kind of outside the box. Even we'll talk about virtual field trips and virtual toolboxes and things that we've seen building trades teachers put together. Is this being recorded? Yes, it is. And it will be posted on our new YouTube playlist for the Career and College Transition Division webinar series. Do you know where I can find content to use for graphic design? Currently, most of us don't have access to Adobe, right? Again, any AME questions, I will engage in extensive dialogue with you. For now, we would say find the web-based solutions as a way to teach basic foundational skills. Design concepts can be taught through Canva. So when students are ready to transition to Adobe software, that they have that foundational understanding and the art skills that they need to transfer. If you're working with more advanced students and need solutions, again, I will be happy to engage in more specific dialogue on anything AME related. Poway Unified has purchased Splashtop for remote access to enable access to STEM CTE specific applications from even iPad Chromebooks. So this must be a remote desktop solution. So there you go. Contact Poway for information regarding Splashtop. I don't know much about Splashtop, so I can't speak to that. Hi, Allison Frenzel. What is your email address? Jewel dropped that in the chat, and we will also have our contacts at the end of the slides. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I think we're going to pause right there. I'm going to leave off on David's question at 3:34, and we will continue the Q&A at the next U-turn slide.
I'm going to throw one more out. Joe from Poway said that they are paying $50 per workstation for that remote desktop.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. All right. We are going to take this U-turn back to the beginning. Hopefully some of your questions will be answered naturally as we go through here. But now Allison is going to share some of the resources that we probably already even mentioned with you from our resource desktop.
So Jewel, can you, so thank you. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is this course planning template by week. So Jewel and we're going to show images on the following slides, but this is the point where you might want to access that document. Jewel, I don't think we put the link at the bottom of this slide, huh? You're muted. Okay. So I think Jewel's going to go ahead and drop the link in the chat. We've put all, our brains are always linked. So here we go. These are templates that we have created, open access, open edit. You will need to make a copy, but these are templates that Jewel and I collaboratively developed to help support planning. They're really simple. They're straightforward. The weekly distance learning adaptation document has apparently become a very popular document and has been used by districts and county offices to develop full courses. It's exciting to know that these are helping people. So really what they are is just providing a structure. You can customize them. You can make a copy. You can customize them, put your program logos on them, take stuff out you don't like, put stuff in that you want there, but it's really to just create a framework so that teachers have something concrete that A, they can refer to in advance and know where they're going, and B, deliver to students in a really straightforward, consistent way. So, there's two course planning templates, and I'll kind of discuss the difference. So Sandra, you just asked where we get them. Jewel just popped a link into the chat. Click on that link, it's to our resource document, and all the templates are linked there. So the course planning template by week was one that I actually really liked. This document there's 36 weeks in a school year. And if you're planning for weekly delivery, that means you have 36 lessons to plan for the whole year. And it really just made it like, oh, okay, so this is palatable. This is something I can do in advance. I can pick my non-negotiable learning objectives. And I can just say, I need to cover this stuff. I have 36 weeks to do it. Each week I'm gonna do it this way. And it was just a really straightforward chronological way to think about planning. So I liked that. If you plan by unit, the second template is maybe more appropriate, but both of those serve the same purpose. So I wanted to speak to that. And again, we understand that many of our CTE teachers coming out of industry don't necessarily get all those pedagogy classes that credential programs offer. And so we wanted to create something that was really just simple and straightforward and you can use tomorrow. So that's what these are. The additional resources on this document, the first one is the website. And again, these are all on your handout. The first one is the website that we've put together for the distance learning resources specific to CTE. You can even just Google search that and look at the CTE distance learning resources. There's a lot of career readiness resources on this page, some that can be done online, some that can be done offline. And so this is just a helpful, all free, all open access links. We had to remove things that had a cost. So while there's some really great programs out there that are fee-based and your Perkins and CTIG funds could possibly cover those costs, we wanted to make sure those represented on the California Department of Ed page were free. So in the beginning of all of this, we launched a task force in the Career and College Transition Division. And that task force pulled people from across the division, from adult education, high school innovations, career tech ed leadership. And we pulled in our partners from the field, Jewel at San Diego County Office of Ed, and from the national level at the Association for Career Technical Education, to publish a newsletter that was going to hopefully help with Band-Aids, it's the best way to put it, from March to June. And so we pushed out this newsletter weekly in the spring, and we'll show you a picture of that so you know what it looks like. But on the newsletter, they're all archived. You can access all of them. And we picked lessons for every sector every week so like theoretically, there's enough content in this collection of newsletters to really get you some creative approaches to maybe some of the things you already did, or lessons that are easily adaptable. We can't guarantee all the links are still active because they were done kind of in real time, but that is a resource that is available to you, and we'll show you what it looks like. So I'm sure many of you will recognize it. Additionally, UCCI has a curriculum integration project that is robust. It is full of course outlines that are pre-populated with lessons, and many of those, and it's completely free and accessible, and many of those lessons can be pulled and adapted for distance learning. So we wanted to make sure you know that resource is available. Of course, CTE Online is a platform where teachers have come in over the course of many years and developed really robust CTE curriculum that is, again, teacher developed. It is vetted by the CTE Online specialists at Butte County Office of Education, and it is posted. And within those curriculum, there's modules, there's course outlines, there's projects, there's integrated, there's pure CTE pathway, they're all labeled, and they're not all designed for distance learning. I have to contextualize that. They are designed for classroom implementation, but the newest content on CTE Online has distance learning considerations, and we have also worked with them to curate and put together distance learning collections for each sector, which within those collections, there are actual lessons and projects and course outlines that are really easily adaptable to a distance learning format. They might not already be structured that way, but at least they're not as scripted as some of the others. This is an ongoing project. It's not currently been updated for, I think the distance learning collections haven't been updated, I think since the spring, but we'll be working with that in the future to update and add some of the new content. And then can you scroll a little bit, Jewel? Because I am not seeing the bottom. Nope, go back to the slide. It's just cut off by my little bar at the bottom. Hang on a second. So the final resource, I think, is the San Diego County Office of Ed curated resource page. Now, this is pretty exciting because San Diego County Office of Ed, like I told you guys earlier, there was I think it was 2 weeks worth of sessions with teachers from across the nation, from every industry sector, getting together in these 3-hour meetings to pull their resources and pull their ideas and capture them. All of that is public. And so we will show you what that looks like and where that lives. Is that the last bullet? I believe so.
Yes.
Excellent, thanks. Okay, so here's just what the templates look like. This is the course adaptation by unit template, and the other one is the weekly template. So we just wanted you to get a kind of glimpse of what those look like. Again, the links are in your document. Next slide, please. This is the distance learning adaptation planning template. This is actually designed to be student facing. So this would be like the cover sheet you would upload in an LMS every week for your student so that they're clear on what the lesson title is, what the objectives or standards are for that lesson, what is the essential question. All the attachment and resource links are right there up top. So they don't have to go hunt for them. They're not anywhere else. For this lesson, we're using Padlet and Flipgrid. So their tech tools are clearly outlined, what the deliverables would be, and any due dates associated, and when their meeting times are. So this is just kind of like a snapshot of the cover sheet of what a lesson would look like. And then it goes into the structure. And this is based on Universal Design for Learning. And it's actually structured very similarly to a CTE Online lesson. So the terms are reflective of the CTE Online terms. For instance, opening activities and instructions referred to as a hook, something that engages students in the initial phases of a lesson. The guided practice is your main activity, your check for understanding, closing and extension activities, and any additional resources and career connections. They can all just be put into this template, delivered the first day that you see students in a week, and it'll help them have something to reference that's just always there. It's all there. So that was something that we know has been really useful to teachers. This was established in March, and it's been widely used. Okay, thank you. Finally, this is the newsletter that we were speaking about. Many of you have probably seen this. It's being pushed out through our division-wide listserv. So if you ever get emails from a path to work, that's coming from our division as CDE. It's also pushed out through the Association for Career Technical Education and through San Diego County Office of Ed, and posted on CTE Online. There are 2 places to locate archives. One is at the ACTE website, and one is on CTE Online. Remember, anything related to CTE Online, you have to sign up for a free teacher account to access. 100% free though, you just need to plug in your information. All right, thank you, Jewel. And finally, this is the page that San Diego County Office of Ed has put up for their virtual work-based learning and distance learning resources by industry sector. So you click specifically on the sector you're looking for, and you will have access to the documents we've been talking about. All right, back to the questions.
All right, I've been trying to answer questions along the way as much as possible. There is a question about articulation, and I think that's going to be something you'll have to negotiate with your community college, and hopefully your K-12 pathway coordinators will also be able to help, as those are being hired throughout the state right now. I see someone says they've used all of their free Padlet allowances. I know on the free account you do not get unlimited items. It's also something that some districts are investing in, so that's something you can ask. Make sure, like I said earlier, you never know, your district might be paying for something and you have no idea it is there, so check in with them. And you know, I don't know, Allison, can CTE departments use the funds to get ed tech tools for their CTE folks?
That's a great question. If it is supporting career technical education, then it is allowable. It is something that is obviously to be used specifically for career technical education programs, but I have not heard anything contrary. So our goal is to prevent learning loss in CTE, and we want to support that however we can at the department. So the funds that you have can prevent learning loss for CTE, and that's really important to recognize.
And I see we have someone who says, for Padlet, I just delete the oldest one and do a new one, so you never go over the max. And so that's one way to go about that, unless you are trying to use the same ones year after year. But yeah, you may be able to, for some of the ed tech tools that you want to use, particularly for your class, you know, talk to your CTE director around what funds might be able to use to buy a few licenses to expand your use of things like Padlet. I think that as we began today, and we did pull everywhere, that the free version has a limit, but if you go, you know, everything's freemium now, right? So if you want to expand your capacity, then you may be able to allocate some of your CTE funds to do that if you're using it for CTE students.
And there is a new Google extension that is identical to Padlet, and I just used it. And so that one is free, so I just have to remember what the name is because I just saw it for the first time. So I'll try and remember that by the end of this.
And someone asked if all the chat links will be in the resource document. Most of them already are. And so we'll look through the chat and try to grab anything that maybe isn't in the resource document and add it at the end.
So did you answer? I'm going to let you go with this round, Jewel, because I'm not sure where we're at.
All right. And so also, just so you all know, once I've answered a question in your Q&A, you should be able to click on the answered section and see the answers there. So I've put a link to the Citizen Chef with Tom Colicchio podcast, and his name is spelled correctly there, Colicchio. I knew it was a challenging one, so that's why I didn't want to make an attempt. And sorry for our interpreter. I'm sure I'm speaking so quickly with these spellings. And so,
and Jewel, I'm just going to mention to everybody who jumped on a little late. This is a 90-minute webinar. Most of them are an hour, but we knew we had a lot of content to cover. So just wanted to let you know that we will be ending at 4:30, not 4 p.m.
But it will be recorded, and I know I've answered that a couple of times in the Q&A, but just so you know, the webinars, I'm putting a link in the chat where you can find the registration links for all of the webinars, as well as the link to each one that's already archived, and at the bottom you'll find the link where this one will be archived as part of that larger playlist on YouTube.
And David, I see a question here about articulation. I think Jewel mentioned it. I don't really have the answer to that, but I encourage you to reach out to Robert Wilson at CDE. He is the transportation consultant and might be able to specifically address automotive questions. And his email is rwilson@cde.ca.gov.
All right, I'm going to move forward if that's all right, Allison. And
yeah,
we'll keep kind of sifting through and individually answering where we can, and then answering out loud. Like there's a question about Padlet, and I think I'll answer that when we do a Padlet as a group. So Allison's going to talk a little bit more right now, and she's going to dive into developing routines.
So some of this is just repeating what we've talked about a little bit. Routines are everything. Many of you are in a world where your district has determined the synchronous learning schedule, and so your routine is somewhat set. We encourage check-in activities and warm-ups at the beginning of every class. I think, you know, like we mentioned early on, there's a learning curve for students, and I mean, California is like basically on fire right now. We're trapped inside. Building an SEL is so important, and what that looks is different for every classroom. But we just encourage you to check in with your kids on a personal level in a way that's meaningful and effective in your world, and that is a personal decision. Where and how students access lessons and assignments is really important. And while many districts have determined that you will be using Google Classroom or you'll be using Canvas, we know that building lessons in LMS platforms it's a challenging process. It's very time consuming. So finding it just something that works for you. This is why we developed the template, so that you can just upload a single thing, and that's your routine. And so that way the kids get used to seeing the same thing, you get used to doing the same thing. It becomes way easier than it is right now. Clarifying in instructions and expectations. So again, this is something that we built the template around. I think the distance learning weekly planning template, the one that we showed you, that was for students. This whole slide really relates to that template. The template allows you to do this in a streamlined way. And so when kids know why they're doing it, they're more inclined to do it. When instructions are clear and expectations are clear, kids follow through, parents know how to support them. So we just want to really emphasize those 3 top bullets, because we can't say it enough. Simple, straightforward routines in distance learning, they're everything. So assessment is something we're going to talk a little bit more about. Again, as Jewel mentioned in the very beginning, I think this is something we're all figuring out right now. How do we assess skills, CTE specific skills, in a distance learning format? So we can talk about formative assessment a little bit. Using Padlet, a tool like Padlet's great. I think that somebody had talked about Nearpod here in the chat as well. So there's all kinds of ed tech tools that help with checking for understanding, but doing a midweek check just to make sure kids are, if you have already established, here's what we're going to be learning this week, and then you find a point to just ask some simple questions related to that objective to make sure that it's being processed, it'll help guide your instruction. So that formative assessment is almost more for the teacher. Do I need to reteach this skill, or can I move on? And so those check for understandings are really important in distance learning because we don't see those face-to-face interactions that we're used to. Students respond to questions with Pear Deck or Kahoot. That's another great little tool that you can use. I actually, Jewel, don't think I added either of those on our resource page. So, but they are both linked on the distance learning weekly planning template, which this slide is really about. Building collaborative documents is a great way to have students interact using Google Docs. And then of course, exit tickets. Like at the end of each class, what does that look like? Whether it's there's different ways to do it. You can do it through chat. You can do it through, a quick Google Classroom submission. Or if you're using other learning management systems, I'm sure that there's other ways, but there's definitely different tricks to exit tickets. So that was another strategy we wanted to share. So I have to give Jewel credit for the creativity here. So thinking about like certain days of the week that kids know what to expect. Turn it in Thursdays. And we decided Thursday was a better day because if they're in 6+ classes and everything's due on Friday, that's overwhelming. So maybe pick a different day of the week for their CTE assignments to be due so that they can get that done without the stress of all of their other academic assignments. So turn it in Thursdays, Flipgrid Fridays are two examples of ways to establish weekly routines. Again, this is referenced in the weekly adaptation template that we provided. All right, and so we have
one question we have here is any tips for creating routines when our block schedules change from week to week? For example, week A, you're meeting Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Week B, you're meeting Tuesday, Thursday. What do you think about that?
Well, I haven't heard of that situation in distance learning yet, so that's a good question. And I mean, maybe you can't just pick a day of the week. So our little example obviously wouldn't work unless you were applying the weekly template over a 2-week period. So say we have that distance learning adaptation document is designed right now for weekly implementation. But if you're in a block schedule where you will see the kids Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, just over the course of 2 weeks, it could be the 2-week distance learning planning adaptation template. And you can establish routines that way. I mean, that's probably the way I would do it if I was still in the classroom personally, because I was on a block schedule like that when I was teaching, and it was like very challenging. So I think I would take that template and I would apply it for 2 weeks of instruction instead of 1. Hopefully that worked as an answer.
Sure. Well, and I think routines are, it's not just about what day of the week that you're engaging, but it's a lot about how you engage, right? So when we come into our classrooms, we have a routine around attendance, which as of what I've heard from teachers, attendance is its own like crazy difficult thing to make happen. And some of you might need to take attendance at the beginning and the end because your districts worry about people logging off. And in fact, one of my friends, her son is in kindergarten, and today the attendance question, they gave him a question, was, do you prefer pizza or chicken? Now, because they're a vegan family, this question was maybe a little difficult for this kindergartner to answer. So, also being thoughtful of making sure that our answers don't exclude anyone. But, how do you maybe have routines for attendance, routines for clicking students in from your waiting room if that's something you're using, but also how do you engage? If you're a student and you showed up to class, what do you do now, right? That becomes your routine. Just like the warm-up that's on the board, will you take attendance in your own class? So being thoughtful about what your like natural routines were in the classroom and then translating them to your in-person experience is great. And ed tech tools are really routined. Today, I started you out with a text number and a code to send to it. If you are working with students and you're using Poll Everywhere all the time, becomes routine. You say like, hey, today we're going to use Poll Everywhere. Here's a reminder how to get in. And that's the warm up while you take attendance, is for them to get into those, right? So developing routines isn't just a day-to-day piece, but how they engage with that material on a regular basis.
So there was a question about how to use Padlet with CTE, particularly culinary interior design or fashion fiber arts. So I think Padlet has endless possibilities, truly. We've seen it used in many different ways, but really it's just Post-its. So say in a collaboration, you've got students who need to, I'm going to use interior design. Each student group is assigned a different room of a home. And so Padlet is a place for them each to add their own ideas about what that design could look like. So, you could set up a topic, and we'll show you. We kind of set one up sort of like this, where it's like, here's the living room, here's the kitchen, here's whatever. And then each group gets to put their ideas. Maybe each student is in charge of a different component. And so they're adding Post-its, digital Post-its, under their assigned section for the components that they're in charge with. Like maybe it's fabric texture. And so you're adding your ideas of what that texture or upholstery should look like. I don't know if that was clear,
yeah.
But
one thing I've actually seen people do, there was a photo teacher who had a breakfast photography challenge, and because you can upload a photo onto your Padlet sticky note, then they ended up with a full gallery of the students' photos. And so you can almost treat it like a gallery of student work if you have them attach it to those sticky notes, and then depending on how you organize the page, they can interact with it differently. So, and we'll
can you share forward-facing students? Yeah. So the next question is, can you share forward-facing student template link in the chat? So that is one of the templates on your document, and the link is in the chat, and it has all the resources. But if Jules nice and feels like picking that one out for you, she can do that.
I think you're talking about the distance learning adaptation document, which has the student-facing component. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in right now. That's the last doc.
Will you provide some certificate to confirm that you are here if you are getting paid for this? Yes, absolutely. We thought of that because of the many inquiries, and we developed a certificate slide. So at the end of this presentation, you will be able to take a screenshot of your certificate. But that's really all you're going to be able to do. So get your buttons ready for screenshotting.
We'll only have it up for 3 seconds. So it's a real challenge. Just kidding. We'll keep it up long enough for you to actually see it.
Do you have, last question and then we'll move on. Do you have central resources for certifications? So the answer to that question is no, because it's a local control state. Your district can determine which certifications. If you're looking for available certifications, there are national resources, like the Association for Career Technical Education, I think, has some suggested certifications. At CDE, we're looking at compiling a resource for this, but it has not yet been compiled. And Jewel Anderson Clark would like to answer this question. Or did you just answer it? Did you just click answer?
Oh, I just clicked, it's going to be answered live, and then it'll go in the answered pile.
I thought you just wanted to add to that.
Just organizes our Q&A. If you can imagine, we're trying to manage through these.
Yeah. So just in terms of certifications, that's where you talk to your advisors and your industry partners, because they know what is necessary for their industry sectors. And so we highly recommend utilizing the expertise of your advisory for that question specifically as well. Great. All right. You're on.
Your community college partners might be a good one to talk to about the certifications they offer as well. All right, so we entered your classroom over here. We went and found a roadmap for planning. We went over here to the resource rest stop, and we took a moment to talk about routines. So let's take a scenic overlook here and talk a little bit about student engagement tips and tricks, and then we will dive forward. So it's really, and Allison talked about this early in our presentation today, is how do we ensure students see the value of learning? And we saw the shift when we weren't giving a grade in the spring. They they were out of here because the value of learning to them was a grade. And so what we want them to see is that learning in CTE is much more than a grade. It is development of skills and preparing them for a real world future. So anywhere that you can mirror the real world in your class, which all of us are currently in the real world working from home, just like our students are learning from home, can help to engage them. So help give them an authentic experience. We've talked a lot about SEL today, social emotional learning, making sure that you connect with your students, engage with them both on the side of just how are things going? What is, like we started out today, what got you through the week this week? But on the other side, connect their learning to what do they want? What are their strengths, interests, and values? And so much of that, which is part of our model curriculum standards and our anchor standards and the standards for career ready practice in CTE, right? That piece around who they are and what they want to be one day, that is also part of social and emotional learning. And so connecting it to their dreams, hopes, and future is a piece of connecting their learning to them and themselves and giving them a value for this. And we've talked about this also, using educational technology in a consistent way is important. We know how overwhelming it can be when more than one tool comes at us in a given meeting. And so we want to get into those routines of using ed tech with our students. Remember, they have 6 teachers probably for the average student. And if they're all using 3 tools, you're up to 18 plus tools that they're balancing. And so the more that you can streamline things, the better. And again, we already talked a little bit about routines, giving students some of their own voice and choice and leadership is important. A few weeks ago, Jackie, who is the agriculture lead for the state, gave a talk on CTSOs and student leadership. And so there may be some really good tips for those of you looking to really develop more formally student leadership opportunities, but also look at your pain points in the work that you're doing. If you are struggling to find examples for a particular curriculum, ask your students to find them. If you are looking to develop experiences for students, they can learn a lot by developing those experiences for each other. And I'll show you on the next page an example of that. Incorporate guest speakers and master classes. So we know that there are classes online that are master classes, and sometimes they're free and you can actually have students take those. I know in addition, like in San Diego County, our energy company, SDG&E, they offer a number of classes at the SDG&E Innovation Center. And all of those have gone into a virtual space. So many of our capstone students might be a good fit for an HVAC class or, something on energy in the home. And so it could be a great way for students to sit beside those in industry and learn in the same way. Guest speakers are huge. Whenever we're talking, it doesn't matter if we know everything. We are their teacher. They hear from us all the time, and that loses some of that exciting authenticity that students need. And so bringing in guest speakers, whether you're having them watch a pre-recorded session or you can bring in someone from your advisory committee is great. And I don't think I added this, but having an authentic audience for their work as well. So you can have some of your advisory committee and industry partners evaluate their work, give feedback, be panelists for presentations as you go as well. So take advantage of those opportunities when they are able to interact virtually with your students. And so giving students actual performance tasks, or just talk to your advisory. What is a challenge that you are facing? And then come up with, whether it's scenario-based or something like that, give students an assignment that says, XYZ Corporation is facing challenge ABC. Here are some parameters. What would you do, right? So giving students more authentic experiences is great. And then those industry partners may be really excited to hear what students have to say. And there's always a chance that something that they came up with will become part of the work that is actually happening in their community. And speaking of community, community impact is another really important component of this work. Wherever we can give students an opportunity to impact their community, to see that the things around them. I know some of our marketing classes here in San Diego County have worked with local businesses to help them market their updated COVID-19 business practices. So how can our marketing students create those, everywhere we go, we see signage that outlines current needs, around mask use or 6-foot distancing. They can help with social media posts and things like that. So how can you actually look to your community and their current needs and put your students in almost internship-like opportunities to work with local businesses, not in person, we can do all of this virtually, but they can get back to their community in a really meaningful way at this time. So these are some of the things that we can do to be more engaging for our students. I found a few examples from the field, and these are all linked in here. We are going to jump into this Padlet in a minute. So as we go through, I do want to share with you, this is kind of a fun piece that a teacher that attended the CTE course collaboration meetings did. And so she built these virtual field trips, and the students can go and basically watch each one of these videos, and then they had an assignment to do feedback. And so what you can do is you can create one field trip and then have the students create field trips for each other around other standards. And so you're not feeling overwhelmed, but basically you should just hyperlink a document with videos around, this is building and construction trades. And then they had to share their observations, and they had to go add a field trip adventure here and create your own map and things like that. So this is just an example of what you can potentially do to engage students. And have them, it's a virtual field trip. Sure, they're not leaving their seat, but it's something a little different. And if you can get students creating it for each other, I think that is its own exciting and engaging piece. Now, I want to give you a chance to try this out. So we're going to go to this Padlet, and it looks like a few people have already taken a look. And basically, over here on the left, what you'll see is kind of a word bank, because I've used this with a few different groups already, and I created some of my own. And Padlet is basically like sticky notes, and the way I've organized this, I'm gonna kind of stretch this out for you so you can see hopefully a little bit more. It'll change what it looks like on your screen. So what you can do at any time is you can push the plus button, it'll give you a new one, and you can add something here. You can also upload a photo or anything like that. And now it's a sticky note, and that sticky note can be dragged anywhere you want to go. So I encourage you to go ahead, log in, not log in, you can actually go straight to this link, and I'll go ahead and put this in the chat. We'll see if we hit capacity on this one like we did earlier. I don't know if it takes us 200 people, but at least you'll see it in action. And what you can do is grab this over here, Microsoft Forms weekly check-in. That somebody put that in as an idea. We can drop that into asynchronous tools, because perhaps even if you're only meeting, every other day, you could say every Wednesday, you need to fill out this weekly check-in. Wednesday weekly check-in. I love alliteration. Can you tell? So I see lots of people dropping these in. And you can kind of see, all right, people are recommending collaboration tools such as Jamboard, Seesaw, over here, additional tools, Nearpod. Look at this is growing great. We've got Edpuzzle dropped in here. I have heard it so many times. I finally logged in last week, and it's a great tool where you can take any video and it makes like a pause point, and then asks a question, and the students are basically quizzed as they go through the video. And so that's a really fun way to turn a video into an assignment that they don't just snooze through. And so here you can see people are dragging different things in.
And Jewel, I saw somebody put in the Google Padlet thing that I was trying to remember. It's Jamboard. I should have remembered that. I knew that. So Jamboard is the Google extension version, I believe. that is really similar to Padlet. I think it has a few less features, but it's still got the sticky note format. This is so cool. I love this. And you guys can have access to this board. We won't take it down. So here's a way to get ideas from each other. There are several AME people on the line, and I'm just going to pitch for Trello because I, as a classroom teacher that did a blended structure for my classroom and did a lot of collaboration online, Trello was invaluable for me, and it is also something that's used in film industry. So it's great for project-based learning, for production planning, all in a digital space. So I just wanted to pitch for that because I actually loved it, but it's kind of complicated. So
I'm going to need you to go into the Padlet, Allison, and add Trello into the appropriate column.
Oh, well, then I wouldn't be able to manage the Q&A, which I was just going to do.
So you're fine.
Okay,
I love that how many people are in here, and I think sometimes it's hard because we hear so much about these tools, but we don't have time to use them, and sometimes it's hard to use with students if you haven't experienced them. You can organize these in all different ways. I've organized it in columns, but there's other ways. You can also require people to be logged in to use it so you don't get anonymous responses, because we all know what happens when anonymous responses are allowed. And so there are ways to have more accountability for folks who are participating in these, but we decided to trust you all because you're teachers, and teachers are very trustworthy at all times.
And I am having a full screen thing, so that's why I'm depending on Jewel to pull things, links and such. I, for some reason, can't switch my computer out of full screen mode. I'm on my CTE computer right now. So, oh,
I think I think the next thing is a U-turn. I'm going to go ahead and pop away. Oh, one thing I will mention, because I talked about this earlier. Imagine if each one of these was an image, because what you'll see is when you do this, there's a little camera there, and if you click on that, you can add an image. And so that's what can make this into more of a gallery. And so when you have something that's, whether it's photo or design or something like that, then you can actually have students turn in their assignments here, and then other students can comment on them as well. So this is a great tool, not only just to organize information, but also for collaboration, whether it is synchronous or asynchronous.
And I mean, I just have to recognize that we know management is a challenge right now. I mean, we're not getting into classroom management strategies in this webinar. That's like a whole nother 90 minutes. So I do want to recognize that though, because a lot of what we're showing you is dependent on a culture of like trust, responsibility, and respect established. And so I just wanted to kind of honor that, because we've heard some wonderful stories already of things that have happened in digital space that would have never happened in a in-person space. So anyways, Jewel, I think, did we skip a slide before you turn? I don't know. Nope, we're good. Okay, so there's really only one question right here. Oh, no, there's not. There's 4. Okay, so there was one question. Are we, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer this very well, or if my answer will be well received, I guess I should say. So we're being asked to develop a hybrid model where only half the students come in and the other half are at home. Teachers are feeling this will create double the work. Any ideas? Also, on an even odd schedule and Friday schedule switches every week. Wow, okay, so that is confusing for the second half of the question. So I can't speak to that because there must be some logic in terms of that, the decision that your district made for that. In terms of hybrid and in person, I mean, like I mentioned, when I ran my classroom, it was a blended learning classroom. And so what I recommend doing is planning for your distance learning using strategies like flipped classroom, deliver lectures in a distance learning format. And then when students are in person, that they're still responsible for the same assignments, and they can come in and work together or do the hands-on component that maybe the distance learning students might not have the opportunity to do. But I would not say you have to double plan. I would say plan for distance learning and then allow the in-person opportunities to be more facilitated rather than direct, if that makes sense. Jewel, do you want to add to that?
What I would say is if you're planning, let's say All you're planning is 5 days a week of instruction. You're planning 2 days of in-person instruction and 2 days of at-home instruction. It's just that the students are going to do those on different days, if that makes sense, right? So you're going to plan at home day one and in class day one, and your kids are going to finish those on Monday, Tuesday. And then you're going to plan in class day two, at home day two, and those students are going to do that Wednesday, Thursday, right? So you're still planning 5 days of instruction. It's just the order in which students are doing them is different. Does that make, like, that's what kind of makes sense to me. And then the Friday being every other is interesting, but you could also look at Fridays as like an additional support day. So that might be your time to intentionally check in with students that you have in person, and you're only going to check in with each student every other week because you're only seeing them every other week. So the students who are in class on Fridays get some kind of small group or one-on-one intervention with you. And the students who are at home maybe have something that is either alternative or like an extra time to finish off whatever they had for that week. And then the next week it's kind of swapped. You could do like Fridays are for like Future Ready Fridays, alliteration. Yeah. And like the kids who are at home are looking at something from CalCURN, the Career Resource Network. Kids in class are getting one-on-one. The next Friday, the kids in class are getting one-on-one. The other kids are doing that career readiness, future ready, something or another that the kids did the week before. So like, I don't want you to feel like you're doing double work. I think the difficulty will be checking in with your asynchronous students on a day that you're in class, because you're in class every day. So that's where the difficulty is in managing that. I definitely, when you come up with all those answers, also share it with us so we can share it forward. Even though Allison and I each taught, I taught for 10 years, she taught for 15, we recognize that we are not at the front lines of this work right now. And without you all sharing your best practices with us, we would have none of this. So please continue to share with us. We only have about 7 minutes left, Allison. So
how many slides?
We have some talk about assessment and ed tech tools. I wonder if we could skip the ed tech ones because we've talked a lot about ed tech and jump to assessment. And then any questions we don't get to, I don't know if we can stay on after 4:30 or we may be able to add them to the resource document. Allison?
Yeah, that sounds, I don't know. Let me see if I can save the Q&A. I do not know if I can, but I will try and figure that out. There is, okay. I'm just seeing if there's any that are related to what's the difference between Padlet and Wakalet. I have absolutely no idea. Oh, looking for a platform for portfolios. We had students build professional websites incorporating portfolios using Weebly. It's drag and drop. It's really a direct, easy format. It was brilliant. It looked professional. They were able to like talk about their iterative process and their problem solving. So please reach out to me and I can send some sample student professional website portfolios using that tool. Weebly is the tool that we used in my program.
Yeah, the only thing to consider is privacy. So anytime you're having students create public facing portfolios, like Weebly is just a website development tool, all you need is waivers from their parents. And a lot of districts do those automatically. When I taught medical chemistry, I said, hey, you're part of a pathway. I want you to sign this waiver every year that says I can, share information about our program, and that can lead to grant funding and more publicity for our program so that we can get, assistance from industry and grants. So if you can, use some of those waivers to ensure that you can do public portfolios, that's one of the pieces of the puzzle, is making sure student information is secure unless you have a waiver.
And as Jules going to the assessment side, there's some questions about PPE and students. California Public Health and CDE did a webinar this morning to address that conversation around the safe return to school. Of course, your local and state public health guidance has to be followed, but our division put out some complementary guidance for when schools are safe to reopen, how to address different sectors. And so you can reach out to me if you'd like to have a copy of that document. In terms of specifics, we recommend that you work with public health officials to determine what is considered safe? I just wanted to answer that across the board because I see a lot of PPE questions coming in. It's not our forte.
Yes, and here, let me grab the guidance. Here's that guidance document that Allison just mentioned from the CDE on for reopening CTE programs in California.
Jewel, is this your slide or mine?
This is mine. All right, so we have only a few minutes left, and so I will let you know, I guess I will tell all of you, which is a lot. I'm actually preparing to do a webinar on assessment strategies for distance learning on CTE next Thursday. And so let me grab that link. And if you want to register for a full webinar on this, instead of about 3-minute overview, that's what I'm preparing for. We already talked a little bit about formative assessment and how that's in routines. But when you're talking about assessment, the worst thing is not to be clear. So you always want students to know exactly what's expected of them. This means you're going to clearly state the learning objective. You want to build in checks for understanding so they know if they're on track to where they're going. And you want to create rubrics along the way so that those outline what you're asking of them and what a good product looks like. You also want to make sure they're paced out. Don't give one grade at the end. You really want to have benchmark dates where students are clear on their progress towards whatever it is. And so those rubrics are going to be helpful. What I used to do is I have a rubric that had like 3 or 4 columns. And so that we have like, first you have the list of what's expected, and then there's a column of the first check-in date. And then you can make marks about all of the things that they still need to work on. And then there's a column for the second check-in date. So when they come in the second time, you can look at the notes you had from the first time and where there's been growth, right? So that as you're moving along in the process of the project, they're getting feedback and they can see their growth and where they need to work on that one same rubric. So I'll dive into that when I do that next week webinar, which now will have to be very good because there's a lot of you on this call. When you're getting into summative assessment, things like multimedia projects are great. I know at our Go Virtual Career Pathways Conference we have coming up in October, I have someone who's going to speak about podcasting and how to do podcasting with your students, right? So these are great ways for students to create something that is different, and it may be easier for them to do at home if they have a quieter environment than a classroom full of 40 students, which may or may not be the case depending on how many siblings they have, but that's something else. CTE kits and doing scale models is something that we've heard, and you can maybe use balsa wood, which can be cut with scissors instead of having to like issue really sharp cutting objects, which could be a liability concern. Have students do presentations. We do them in the classroom. You can do them just like I'm doing one now. So that's one of the ways. Process portfolios are a beautiful way to assess learning. And I'll get into that a little bit more later. Infographics, like Canva, we talked about. PictoChart is another similar program. And Allison's sharing more about podcasts in the chat. And also, why are we telling them what they should make? If we can say, here's what I want you to show as far as a skill, go for it, or give them a little menu, that's even more exciting around what they could put together. I came up with this fun idea, and so we'll see. I'm excited if someone will pick it up and send me what they're doing. But perhaps having, let's say, a student takes a welding video and does a voiceover like sportscasting style. And now the welder puts on their personal protective equipment, and it is rated at a certain amount in order to block out the light from the welding that's about to occur. They hold their torch at a certain angle as they turn on the flame at this temperature, right? So they can, the student could actually sportscast over a real video of someone doing it, and that may give you a good idea of how much they know about what's happening there.
And Jules' demonstration of that is my favorite thing.
If you've been to some of my things recently, I've been practicing. So now I just need to find a welding video, but you'll soon find out how little I know about welding. It's possible the pipetting is probably my better choice as I taught chemistry. All right, so as we go through here, I'm just gonna go straight over to this next steps and not go back to our beginning because we are right at 4:30 and I know some of you want that screenshot. So again, here are some of the things that you could do Allison, did you want to talk about any of these?
No, all these links are on your document. So really it's just, we're just kind of showing you what they're for. So there's some random links on that document. We've linked to our YouTube playlist, which will have the whole webinar series. We have some upcoming webinars that are about holding virtual stakeholder meetings and special populations and career tech ed. And so we encourage you to attend those, and you can watch them archived as well. And then if you want to subscribe to all of the updates coming out of the Career and College Transition Division, you send a blank email to that address. Jules' conference link is there, and ACT has been an incredible partner for the state, and they have some really great resources. One thing that they are offering is a they've partnered with Accenture, and they are offering a special program where if 500 students in a district complete a free career readiness program called Skills to Succeed, that district receives an incentive of $1,000. So, or that, the program. So we recommend that you reach out to them directly for information about that. You have to sign up with them to be part of that program.
And there's more information on the email in our most recent newsletter, which you can find in those archives.
Yep. And then I think the last slide is you are done with this webinar. And I copied all of the questions, I think, unless new ones came in. So I just copied them and put them on a document. So we will address them. Oh, okay, there's more. So let me go ahead and make sure I have these. Excellent. And we also recommend you reach out to your CTSOs because they have been producing really incredible stuff, and it's a great way to get your students connected to a larger CTE community and build some leadership into your programs. So with that, we are promptly done. And if you have any final questions, please drop them in the chat. I'm going to put my email address here as well. Actually, what is happening? Okay, Jewel. I can't even open. There it is. Wait. I need you. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to put my email in the chat. There it is. Okay. So Jewel put hers and mine is. So if you are AME specific and have questions around that, or if you just want some more guidance, Jewel and I are available and willing to help. So.
All right. We didn't quite make it in an hour and a half through every slide, but hopefully that fire hose of information will get you through the beginnings of the work you're doing. Keep up the amazing work. It is incredible the way that all of you have pivoted in order to ensure students still are getting a high quality education. So now that it's 4:30 and you are ready for your day to end, we just wanted to end on a moment of thanks. And we will see you again at the next CTE webinar coming soon.
And then we're just going to turn off our cameras and mute and leave this up until the participants disappear so that you guys have your time to take that screenshot. So thanks again. You are definitely appreciated more than you know. So thanks for attending and thanks for being there for kiddos right now.
Thank you.